Hi readers, Lee here. Welcome back to my channel, Lila Wanders and Reads. I'm so happy to have you all here, and today I'm going to do my first Tag Tuesday video. I did not create this tag. I saw it over at Greg's channel, Supposedly Fun, on YouTube, and I thought, well, let me try this out. I'm only tagging one person because that's the only person I know in BookTube, but maybe this year will think about creating some of my own tags. Anywho, this is the mid-year book freakout tag for 2024. I don't know who the originator of that tag was, but there are 15 prompts, so let's get started. The first prompt is best book so far this year. And for me, it's hands down The Women by Kristin Hannah. Since I read this, I've been reading a lot more Kristin Hannah. This to me is still, like, her writing is just getting better and better and better. I absolutely loved this. I did a video review of this. I will talk about that more later. The next prompt is best sequel you've read so far this year. And I realize now that I have read a couple sequels, but only very few. So the one I chose for the best was actually kind of a prequel, but it was written after the original. The original being Practical Magic, and the prequel, is The Rules of Magic by Alice Hoffman. I really, really liked this book. It just gave me so much more information about Sally and Jillian, and I can't wait to continue on in this series. Next up is a new release you haven't read but want to, and I had to really try to hone that in because, yes, it's all of them. And right now I'm going back and forth because I had one picked out and I want to read it. I mean, I want to read all the books that I get, but I'm going to have to go with, as far as wanting to read more quickly, Two Sides to Every Murder by Danielle Valentine. I read her How to Survive Your Murder last year and tore it up. It was a great, fantastic slasher, and I hope that this one is as well. I've had a little bit of a problem this year with anticipating books and then being let down because I anticipated them being a lot better, so I hope that's not the case with this one. How to Survive Your Murder was excellent. Loved that book, so fingers crossed. Dang, I don't have my phone here. Oh well. So the fourth prompt is most anticipated read for the second half of the year. And I just talked about anticipation. I've had, and I will discuss in this video, some very anticipated books that let me down. I mean, it's happened more than once. So I'm nervous about anticipating something because I'm afraid they're going to let me down. So one book that I don't have, because I don't know where my phone is, that I'm looking forward to is The Mirror, Lost Bride Trilogy #2 by Nora Roberts. And I chose this one even though there are other books that I'm really anticipating because I know Nora won't let me down. She never has. Some of her books I like more than others, but there's a stability and a formula to it that I know I will enjoy the book even if it may not be my favorite. So I'm going to go with something safe on this because I don't want to get my hopes up. I'm tired of getting my hopes up and then having them dashed. And speaking of that, prompt number 5, biggest disappointment. Y'all, I had been anticipating this book so much. I pre-ordered it from Amazon so that I would get it on pub day, and I got it. And I did a whole review. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit more down the road. A whole review on this book that describes my main disappointment. Had it not been for this one thing that the author kept doubling down on, this would have been a 5-star read. But as it was, I gave Murder Road a 2-star. I am not going to go into all the reasons why. Again, I've done a review on that. But this was hands down my biggest disappointment. It was the biggest disappointment because, like I said, other than one thing, it would have been a 5-star. And I have always loved Simone St. James's writing. But at this point, I don't know if I will buy her again. That's how serious this upset me. Seriously, whatever. Anywho. Okay. From the biggest disappointment, let's go to prompt 6 and the biggest surprise. That was Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. I bought the entire series that had been published on a book buying binge. And I don't know, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just buy an entire series and then don't read it for a long, long time. But I really did not have high hopes for this, even though I bought the entire series. But then in April, I decided to do kind of a witchy month. It ended up being a witchy fortnight. And I picked up this to read in April, and I adored it. I adored it. I read, there's like 4 or 5 books out right now. I can't remember how many. And I loved all of them. I think one of them was less for me, but that also could have been because I was reading them back to back to back. And when I do that, when I binge a series, it starts to diminish my enjoyment of it. I need to break things up. I am looking forward to the next book in this series that comes out in like August or September. But again, I'm afraid to put it on my most anticipated, lest it let me down. But I had a really good time with Payback's a Witch in the series, and I do look forward to reading something, the next, I want to say next episode. But that was definitely my biggest surprise. Up until this week, prompt number 7, I had written all my little answers out on a note card right here. And by 7, it had question mark, question mark, question mark. That was, what is your favorite new author? Either debut or new to you. And like I said, up until this past week, I didn't have an answer to that. Nothing really stood out. But then, last Tuesday, I bought We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This story, I guess, started out on Reddit somewhere. I'm not very familiar with Reddit, but I sat down to read this, and I forgot chores. I didn't eat supper. I did not do anything that I was supposed to do Tuesday evening except read this book. I finished it Tuesday evening, like 8:30, so in like 4 hours-ish, and I absolutely adored it. I will be on the lookout for more books by him. I hope that he maintains this writing style. Fantastic. Highly recommend. All right. Okay. 8 and 9, similar. Prompt 8 is, what is your newest fictional crush? And for me, that's a hard one because I don't have fictional crushes. I enjoy characters and I like characters, but I don't really get crushes on fictional individuals. So I don't have an answer for that. If you do, that's cool. I'd love to hear what yours are, but I don't have fictional crushes. Prompt number 9 is similar. Who is your newest favorite character? Again, I don't really have a favorite character. I enjoyed the character for that book, and then I move on to the next book. Some characters I remember more than others, but mostly what I remember about a book is the way that it made me feel. So I really don't have a favorite character. It's kind of, is it like having a favorite kid? Like you like one more than other? Yeah, I don't know. Okay. So prompt number 10 is name a book that made you cry, or the saddest book that you read. There are, I like to cry when I read sometimes, so there's probably more books that made me cry, but that I moved on from and they didn't stay with me. But the book that I have, the answer for this is one that I was finishing up in a public setting. So I did not cry, but I felt like my heart was breaking in my chest. And if I had been at home when I read this ending, I would have been a just ball of sobs. And that book is Cujo by Stephen King. I was doing a reread of this, and again, I was in a public place, so I couldn't even like shed a tear. I teared up, but I had to like breathe through it. But it was this paragraph that really just broke my heart. Shortly following those mortal events in the Camber dooryard, Cujo's remains were cremated. The ashes went out with the trash and were disposed of at the Augusta Waste Treatment Plant. It would perhaps not be amiss to point out that he had always tried to be a good dog. He had tried to do all the things his man and his woman, and most of all his boy, had asked or expected of him. He would have died for them if that had been required. He had never wanted to kill anybody. He had been struck by something, possibly destiny or fate, or only a degenerative nerve disease called rabies. Free will was not a factor. Like, I want to cry right now. It's just heartbreaking because Cujo is the monster of this book, but all he had ever wanted to be was a good boy. And then he gets bit by a bat, and now I'm going to sit here and cry. So, on the opposite of that, for number 11, what's a book that made you happy? A lot of books made me happy. And a lot of books that I've read recently. But one that really resonated with me is Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame. This was about... I wrote in here, I don't want this book to end. This book was based on a reality-based baking show that really looked a lot like the Great British Baking Show. And what I love about that is in that show, they are all there for each other. There's very little negativity unless it's about the bake, but you don't see people running each other down or, being unnecessarily competitive. It's just a good time. And so was Mrs. Quinn's Rise to Fame. It made me feel happy. And that's why it is up there with one of my top books of the year. When I finished it, there was something at the end that I started wanting to pick apart, but then I was like, fuck that. This book made me happy. I'm not going to pick it apart. Number 12. What did I put down for that? Okay. My favorite book to film adaptation. Now, right now, I am currently reading The Stepford Wives, and I watched for the first time the original movie. So that may end up being an answer later down the road. But up to this point, aside from Cujo, the only other book that I can remember that I've read this year that had a movie based on it was Erasure. And that movie was American Fiction by Percival Everett. I loved the book. I think some parts of the book went over my head, and I really liked the movie. It does seem like it's supposed to be funnier than it was, because really it's a deep movie, and it's not all good times and not all funny where some of the clips that they show are. I really enjoyed Erasure. I recently got another book by Percival Everett, and I'm interested to read that. Okay, here's where we talk about my reviews on The Women and on Murder Road. So, what is the favorite review or video review you've done so far this year? My answer should be The Women, because that is my most played video. It's got 1,215 views, and I am proud of that. But I wonder sometimes if it's because the book is really popular, more so than I. But the one that I am most, proud of is the one I did on Murder Road, and it's only got 106 views. why is this my favorite? Why is this the one I'm most proud of? It's because someone had to say it. When I talk about how disappointed I was in Murder Road, it is because the author set this book in 1995, and yet throughout the book, she consistently refers to the hero or the main male character as having been in Iraq for a 14-month deployment, and then they were going to send him back, and yada, yada, yada. And it became clear to me throughout that she was referring, the events she was referring to with regard to the husband's military service could only have happened after 2003. And this book was set in 1995. It could not have even happened during the Gulf War because that ended in early 1991 before the husband's alleged 14-month deployment. I still get mad when I think about this book. It's my biggest disappointment, but my favorite video because I think I articulated all the ways this let me down and also how she could have redeemed herself. But it seemed like she was so stuck on having this set in 1995. We know because she throws pictures of Princess Diana in our face every 5 seconds. But she botched the whole military thing. She could have just left that out entirely, but she didn't. She kept doubling down to the very end. Anyway, someone needed to say it, and I've seen only one other person who even caught that that was an issue, to include major authors, well, maybe not major, but authors and reviewers who totally skipped over the fact that none of that shit could have happened in the military in 1993. Okay. Rant over. So, 2 more prompts. Number 14 is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. My most beautiful book was also a disappointment. And that is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. I pre-ordered a B&N exclusive edition for this slipcover and also this. Gorgeous. The cover and the slipcover, fire. What's inside? Not so much. The only reason I am keeping this is because how gorgeous this cover is. Lisa Jewell calls it an emotionally charged, twisty, and haunting thriller you won't soon forget. It is not twisty or haunting or emotionally charged. Terrible. All right. The final question is, again, one that's hard for me to answer, and that is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Now, if that prompt had been, what books do you want to read? Oh, I could have gone on for another 10, 20 minutes. But that's not the question. So, I don't need to read anything really except for one book. And that is a book I think I started in December. But it's too big to be a purse book. And sometimes I get so caught up in the evening reading fiction that I don't take 20 minutes to read a little nonfiction. That book is, drumroll, if you know anything about me, in my nonfiction reading, I am focused on the World Wars, particularly World War II. And I think that it's time, I want to finish before the end of this year, Shirer's The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, A History of Nazi Germany. This is like a classic, and I've seen some complaints about his opinions on homosexuals and other things that don't, match modern life. However, I still think I need to read it because it is a classic, and I want to finish it. I am like on page 81 out of 1,000 some odd pages. I know I can get there. I have used this as a reference book. A lot of other historians refer to Shirer. So, goal, try to get this done before the end of the year. That's the only one I need to read. Everything else is just a want to. So, if you're watching this and you're a booktuber, hey, I'd love for you to tag me in if you do this mid-year book freakout tag. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear from you. The link to my reviews of The Women and Murder Road are in the description box. And I will be back tomorrow with my June reading recap. That is it for me. Stay cool for those of you who are deep into summer, and happy reading.